What is everybody? Kyle Murray from FTN Bets back again with another prop betting with a model video. And this time we're here talking about the conference championships for this week's NFL playoff weekend. And looking forward to this weekend's games. Obviously, last weekend was phenomenal. 4 games that ended with walk-off scores, a couple overtime games, a couple of game-winning field goals, and it was overall just a fantastic weekend of football. And I'm expecting more of the same. We have 2 games here, 4 teams left, so that gives us, still a few spots to look at some props here. And I'm going to be taking a little bit different of a stance here on this week's video. Typically we do the standard props, and we're going to have one of those picks that are pretty standard, but we're going to go with 2 different types of plays. Where we're going with a 2 touchdown scorer and a most playoff rushing yards for the weekend. And it's 2 picks that I like a lot for some pretty nice odds, so let's get right into them. Here, first pick, over 292.5 passing yards for Patrick Mahomes. You can see it on the screen now. I have him leading the week in passing yards. 304 is where I have him. If Kansas City is going to move the ball, you got to figure it's going to be with Patrick Mahomes, right? The running back situation kind of in a frenzy now with all the injuries that they're dealing with. And even last week when they got Clyde back, he was still banged up a little bit, playing limited, and Jerick McKinnon actually worked in for a ton of those snaps. And again, this offense runs through Patrick Mahomes. It's the playoffs. It's the conference championship now. They're not going to, allow him to go too often without the ball in his hands. I think he's going to have a ton of volume, which is often going to lead to massive yards here for Patrick Mahomes. Next pick on the board, Cam Akers, most playoff rushing yards. And this one, we can pull up the projections here. This is more of a game theory type play. As you can see, the projections have him as the 3rd most rushing yards. In terms of odds, when we're breaking down the board here on DraftKings, where I found this bet, the number 1 in terms of most likely to win here, or to lead the weekend in rushing yards, is Elijah Mitchell. Right off the bat, if Elijah Mitchell isn't the leading rusher of the week, there's 2 guys that probably benefit from that. First would be Deebo Samuel, which I don't mind taking a stab on this. Like if Deebo breaks off a couple of long runs, he's plus 750. But I think Cam Akers overall is just a bit more likely. And again, if Elijah Mitchell finds himself in a scenario where he's not the leading rusher, one of the reasons why it could very well be just a game script that goes awry for him, right? Where he's kind of scripted out of the rushing game, which could be very possible here against the Rams. Overall, also a tough matchup as well. And if that were to be the case, it would be a good game script for Cam Akers, who the carries have been there for him the last 2 weeks. Pretty confident he's going to have pretty significant volume here. I have him for about 16 carries. Have the efficiency down a little bit, tough matchup, and his efficiency last weekend was not all that great. But 2 weeks ago we actually saw some solid efficiency. So I'm willing to take a shot on Cam Akers here at plus 425 to lead the weekend in playoff rushing yards. And really, when you look at the board, in terms of running backs, there's only 3 guys that you can really take here in terms of logical odds here. I guess you could take a stab at one of the Chiefs guys. Jerick McKinnon is plus 1,200. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is plus 2,500. But in terms of the other 3 running backs, Elijah Mitchell, he's minus 125, and him being that likely of a favorite makes it actually pretty appealing to even take shots on guys like Joe Mixon or Cam Akers. Now, I didn't want to bring a ton of picks for the leading the weekend in rushing yards here to the video, but so Cam Akers was the guy that I ultimately decided on, because you'll see the next pick doesn't really correlate that great with Joe Mixon. However, if you wanted to take a stab on Joe Mixon at plus 650, I don't mind that at all. Like Elijah Mitchell being this much of a favorite here in a scenario where typically you're not going to see a ton of favorites here. So DraftKings, in my opinion, is probably giving Elijah Mitchell a bit too much credit here. And again, I do think he is the most likely. You can see in the projections, I have him leading the weekend in rushing yards, but he's only 2 yards ahead of Mixon, and I know he's 20 yards ahead of Cam Akers, but again, there's lots of scenarios where things can go a little bit different here for Mitchell. And I just think that the minus 125 is a bit too favorable. So taking stabs on guys like Akers and Mixon, I do like a lot. Akers would be the guy that I would bet first if I was leaving it to just one guy. But my final pick of the week is going to be Jamar Chase, plus 600 to score 2 or more touchdowns. And I know you have to assume that the Chiefs are going to be keying in on him, right? You have to. But why wouldn't we assume that last time they played, right? Like Jamar Chase was the absolute guy here in Cincinnati. He has been all year long, and he's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. I believe he made the Pro Bowl. So like these defenses have been keying on him all season long. So I find it hard to believe that the big thing where people have been talking about Jamar Chase this week. Oh well, Kansas City's defense is going to key in on him and probably try to shut him down. I mean, you look back 3 weeks ago when they faced each other in Week 16. I'm sure they tried then to shut Jamar Chase down, and they failed miserably. We know that he went for 3 touchdowns, 266 yards. So again, a 2-touchdown game. That's a lot of production, right? But we just saw him put up 3 against his team. Sorry, in Week 17, just 4 weeks ago. So we clearly know he has the upside. He's scored 2 or more touchdowns now in 3 games so far this season, and we know he has 13 touchdowns on the year. Great matchup for him. You guys can check out the advanced matchups and the advanced wide receiver cornerback matchups tool that we actually have on FTNDaily.com that Debro and Alex do a great job writing up, and Jeff's wide receiver cornerback tool. Things point to a strong matchup for Jamar Chase, which makes a lot of sense considering the stat line I just mentioned that he put up against this Kansas City team. So when looking at the board for players who are on the board for 2 or more touchdowns, Jamar Chase was the first guy to stand out naturally to me. But in terms of taking stabs on some other guys, don't mind taking a stab on a guy in the same game, same team, same position, T. Higgins. Again, more of a matchup thing. But at plus 600, it kind of feels like Jamar Chase should be the favorite here. Joe Mixon's actually the favorite at plus 380. I actually do have him as the highest touchdown scorer amongst non-quarterbacks. But again, like in terms of guys with pretty solid odds and I think a reasonable expectation of being able to get this done, Jamar Chase was the guy for me. So those are the 3 picks for me of the week. Let's see if we can find these numbers here in the prop shop. Sometimes we don't get the real deep odds like the playoff specials like these sites are offering, but we can for sure check out Patrick Mahomes here. Again, over 292.5, but you can actually see him on FanDuel at 290.5, and actually better odds than on DraftKings. So that's actually a line that I missed. So I'm going to go ahead and actually look for that one instead of the DraftKings line, which is where I initially looked. So that's obviously the one where you can, again, get a 2-yard kind of discount there. But let's check out Cam Akers so can't see anything here, but like I mentioned, on DraftKings right now, he's plus 425, and Jamar Chase is currently plus 600 to score twice. That Cam Akers bet, again, is to have the most rushing yards on the playoff weekend. So those are the 3 picks for this weekend. Again, just to recap, Patrick Mahomes over 292.5 passing yards at minus 115, but you can actually find it on FanDuel at 290.5 at minus 114, so I highly recommend doing that. Second pick is Cam Akers to lead the NFL in playoff rushing yards this weekend at plus 425. And the third and final bet of the weekend is Jamar Chase plus 600 to score 2 or more touchdowns against the Chiefs. Looking forward to a couple of really good football games here. I hope you guys are looking forward to them as well. Hopefully you enjoy the sweat. Hopefully you cash some bets. We'll see you guys next week for some Super Bowl picks. Actually, not next week. In 2 weeks for some Super Bowl picks. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.